See if we can get that fixed. All right.
Well, you're there. Okay. Don't bother answering. You're there.
So get you renamed.
I think you may be muted.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm having computer problems. I was having trouble connecting to the internet from my home computer, which was stopping me from sending you the documents I'm trying to send you, and I couldn't actually get in. But sorry for the delay.
Look at that. Welcome, Tom.
I briefed them on my little incident with the Historic Commission.
Hold on really quickly. Let's just take care of a couple of quick housekeeping matters. I didn't quite finish the minutes. I was just scrambling around trying to do this thing, and I got literally 2 minutes more in the minutes. I may send it to you guys during this meeting, but I don't have minutes for us to approve quite yet, but I'll have it soon. And for meetings for this meeting, I guess it's been toggling back between me and Joe. Joe, do you want to take this one for the minutes?
I can do that. Are we formally starting right now?
Oh, did we? I heard the meeting's in progress. Do we need to do anything more formal to kick off the meeting?
You're the chair.
I hereby commence the meeting. This is my gavel. We are hereby commenced in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Let me break out my sword.
I was going to put on one of those white wigs.
I could use it more comfortable in my bald head.
All right, now, yeah, Alex, you were just starting to talk about the Historical Commission. I think just to frame it, where we left this was, I think you were going to do some research to try to determine the more precise status of the property, of the building, the school building, in the Mass or National Registry of Historical Homes. So you want to tell us what you found?
Nothing, because I was told not to go to the meeting. But she did tell me to do it all over the phone. So maybe I'll call them and phone. I would think that's more of a breach of open meeting laws than.
Well, it's not, because if you just call the chair and have a one-on-one conversation with one person, that's totally legal. What's not legal would be if three out of the four of us went to a golf course and we started discussing one of our agenda items outside open meeting. That's an open meeting law violation.
Okay. I'm not clear on all this, so
okay, that sounds good. You want to have another go of it between now and next meeting, Alex?
Definitely.
You know, part of it is talking to the chair or talking to Kate Battles, whoever it is who might have information in the town as to where you might find that. But then there's a bunch of resources online as well. So if you spent some time kicking around, searches of the Massachusetts Registry of Historical, properties or buildings, and the National, you might be able to find the answer. I did a little bit of it myself. I spent probably half an hour, I don't know, like a month ago or maybe longer, kicking around. And it is, I listed in there, but it's a little confusing in that there's different categories of
I'm somewhat familiar with it.
It was unclear to me what exactly status this property was. And I just, in the half hour I put into it, I didn't stick around for another half an hour to sort of try to sort that all out.
I've been on a lot of historic commissions. I should be able to fathom it. I'll do that between.
Okay, gotcha. You want to do that between now and next meeting, and I hope to have, because I circulated my draft report and I didn't get as much done on this as I would have liked to. So I'm thinking we'll have another meeting relatively soon, like maybe in the next 2 weeks. So maybe between now and then, if you want to.
For what it's worth, he did say he would like to be working with SHOPC.
Yeah, but we're not there yet. We're just researching the status.
I know. I'm just saying
when the next people get to developing the property, they can deal with the Historical Commission as to making the policy decision whether to tear down the building or keep it up and rehab it. But that's, we're just literally, looking into the question of what the status is.
Okay.
So it's too early to have a formal, coordination with the Historical Commission.
He was looking for the coordination. I was just looking for information.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, let me just tell you guys a little bit what I've been up to since our last meeting, which some of which is reflected on the update of the subcommittee report that I just circulated. I was going back into the zoning. I was looking back at the MRD, and I realized that I glossed over, honestly, I mean, fully candidly, I glossed over this before. There's actually an affordable housing component to the MRD that actually has a 12.5% mandate for all residential units in an MRD. And then I don't know how I missed this before. There's a whole subsection detailed on the requirements of the affordable units, from standards of affordability. It's for low income housing, and they have standards for what constitutes low income households, and the determination of affordability. And SHOPC has to sign up at their sale units. SHOPC has to sign off on the sale price to make sure that the sale price is commensurate with keeping the affordability standards. It's actually very well drafted. And the problem is that it's in the context of the MRD. And just to indulge me for a second, the MRD really, as its core, is an open space preservation bylaw. In very basic terms, the point of it is to take, a hypothetical, 5-acre parcel of land that you can hypothetically fit 10 half-acre subdivision lots on. And what it is designed to do is allow you to condense those 10 units into a smaller area of the property, say 5 acres, my hypothetical, and leave the other 5 acres as open space, undeveloped land. And so that's a good bylaw for its purpose, right? To preserve open land and to develop on a smaller area and give relief from the minimum lot sizes in order to develop the same 10 units, the same number of units on a smaller area of the land. And there's all sorts of good things that flow from that: lower development costs and open space preservation, environmental. That's all good, but it's really not a multifamily housing bylaw. There's a multifamily housing section of it that really is just kind of ancillary to the open space preservation concept. In other words, it's saying, in my hypothetical, take those same 10 units, develop them on a smaller portion of the land, and those 10 units can be put into clusters of multifamily units of up to 4 units. And that's all good for open space, but it doesn't allow for, what we might more traditionally want to create for multifamily housing, like say a small 10 unit apartment building on 2 acres would create affordable housing and multifamily housing. But you can't do that on the MRD because you need 10 acres or 5 acres in order to create those units. So I mean, one of the things I'm learning about the MRD is that multifamily housing, if anyone in the town, whether it's SHOPC or the planning board, whatever, goes to revisit the MRD, I almost think that there should be a second subset or second subsection of the MRD that only deals with multifamily housing development, decoupled from the open space preservation that the MRD stands for. So pulling that back to our relevance, back to the affordable housing, there's actually, as part of the affordable housing terms, there are density incentives to affordable housing. And the provision basically says that for every affordable unit that's required under that same 12.5% that I just mentioned, for every unit that's required to be affordable housing, they'll give an extra 3 units of density in the project for each affordable unit that's mandated. So bringing that back to our specific site, you know, as we outlined before, because there's like 3.5 acres, and you know, you can only have the number of units that 3.5 acres would yield in a conventional subdivision, which, as we talked about before, is only 6 units. With this affordable housing density bonus, you know, those 6 units, 12.5% would basically be 1 unit would need to be affordable, because, you know, 12.5% of 6 is like 0.75. So if you round up, that's only 1
So
unit.
it does say it in the draft. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
It says accordingly, if the site were to be developed in MRD, no more than 6 units would be approvable. At least 2 of those units would need to be single family.
Right. That's a different component from
Okay, my
the
bad.
density
Got it.
determination versus the actual number of units that actually go on there.
Thank you.
Yes. So the upshot of all of this is that because of the affordability density component, there could actually be 9 units on this site because of this 3 unit. You know, if you just do conventional density calculation, it's only 6 units, but with this 3 unit bonus for an affordable unit, for the one affordable unit, it increases the overall project approvable number of units to 9, which again isn't the 14 or 15 that, you know, we think is development feasible on this site, but it does make it a little bit better under the MRD. So that's, anyway, if that makes sense, that's the point I put into the new language in this.
And is this, do I have the right draft up with that?
Yeah,
Tom?
yep,
Yeah.
you do.
No, I think that's good personally.
Yeah. So it's just, you know, this is probably for another body other than us, but it just kind of hones in on how the MRD might be amended to help achieve some more dense housing.
So Tom, can we move on to adaptive reuse, or do you?
Yes.
Because I had put in a bunch of language on that. It says in this draft, Jesse's still working on the subsection.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it. Because the adaptive reuse, remember we were looking at the adaptive reuse thing?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you're the one
And
that
it
pointed
said,
out.
and it said on there, you can do
Multifamily
you can
condos
do
and
apartments.
Yeah.
So you could even just change it. It's pretty straightforward. For the adaptive reuse bylaw, apartments aren't allowed use, which gives a developer leeway with the restriction of, as you've pointed out a couple times, you have to stay within the confines of the current footprint.
Yeah, and then there's
So-
that. The other component is the other limitation to the elderly housing bylaw is that there's a cap that the number of elderly housing units approved can never be more than 7% of the total number of single family homes in Southborough. And so the problem there is, as what's her name pointed out, I'm sorry, I forgot her name.
Karina, yeah,
Katrina pointed out, under the current calculations, it would only yield a couple of units. So
Say
they couldn't
3.
do, what's that, 3? Yeah. So basically a developer or the town couldn't do a 12 to 15 unit elderly housing development on this site under the elderly housing bylaw, because the current cap would only allow for 3. So that's just another limitation on, how multifamily housing can be developed under our current bylaws. Elderly housing is not a viable option.
So, sorry, I think we kind of skipped adaptive reuse because the adaptive reuse.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Al.
The
I'm having a bad
reuse
morning. I'm
thing-
skipping all over the
Yeah, I
place.
know,
Yes,
I
we're
think-
talking
I think we got
adaptive reuse.
conflated
Yes.
there a little bit.
Yeah, so
Adaptive-
you're right. Adaptive reuse, right? We could just add that point. That, but I thought, I don't know whether you wanted to. Did you have language that sort of went into just kind of the details of adaptive reuse and what's allowed? I thought we'd flush that out a little bit with I don't know, 3 or 4 sentences, kind of summarizing how the adaptive reuse would come to bear and what the standards are. Not a huge thing, but just and this is where Alex's historical status of the building comes into play, because we need to have a determination whether this adaptive reuse of historical buildings actually applies to this building, which we don't know unless we get confirmation that it's a historic building.
All right. So in other words, okay, I think I see where this is going. Like, I need to basically come up with the language for
Yeah, if you want to take a stab at
These
just
two
drafting
sections.
something similar to what I did, it doesn't need to be nearly as long as the MRD, because that's a much more major. But if you could just do, 4 or 5 sentence summary of the adaptive reuse of historic building bylaw and how it would come into play here. And I it's been a while since I've looked at it, but whatever, I don't know if that talks about the number of, I don't know if that puts a unit limit or anything on the property. And maybe it may be as simple as, if it's categorized as a historical building, you can reuse it for, you can get a special permit by, I don't know if it's a planning board or the ZBA to, for adaptive reuse of the building to convert it to, to multifamily housing. And, you can cite that section under commercial and industrial uses that allows for apartments and condominiums. Maybe it's not more, maybe it doesn't need to be much more than that.
All right, got it.
I have a naive question. If it were to be used as rental, who would be the landlord?
Well, it depends on who developed it. If a private developer developed it, the developer would own the building and would be the landlord. If the town developed it, which I think I want to have Joe talk about this in a minute. If the town developed it and the town owned the building, then the town would be the landlord. Whoever owns the building, owns the property, will be the landlord.
Like Colonial Gardens, at that point, if the town owns it.
Does the town own Colonial Gardens?
Well, so the state, actually, I come to think of it. State and the town.
I think we've just moved over to this section.
Yeah.
Was there something before that we wanted to cover? MBTA.
Just the elderly housing. I think we
40B.
just talked about the elderly housing that I think we just covered it.
Oh,
we can
okay.
probably
Well,
skip
I
over
think
that.
that's in my court as well, Tom.
Oh, is it?
'Cause I have the guidelines for that. So I'll work
Okay.
up the language for the next meeting for these two
Okay, cool.
paragraphs.
Cool. Thanks, Jesse.
Don't thank me yet.
We can all, and I'm a perfect example. I hope to have a lot more of these sections filled out on drafting, and just real life gets in the way and it's just hard to get to. So I'm hoping if we set another meeting in the next 2 weeks, and I'll do some drafting, you can do some drafting, Alex can follow up. We'll, that's the nature of this. We're doing the best we can.
And the MBTA zoning, I think we'll know more after the, Joe, I don't
I
know
was
if
thinking
you're,
the same thing.
I don't know if you're aware, Joe, that there's a joint meeting with SHOPC and Planning Board on November 7th to discuss the MBTA zoning.
Sorry, I find it funny because we were looking at that before, and I read what they finally put out about that, and I mean, we are so poorly situated for that program. It's amazing because I mean,
without getting into a total off diatribe on this, it actually, I looked at it too. It's actually a lot. They made a lot of adjustments to it from the earlier draft that was sent out last year, which was, it's much more forgiving and flexible now than it was when it started. So it's still difficult, but it's not nearly as impossible as it was, when they first put it out.
yeah.
And
Well,
Joe, if you don't have anything better to do on November 7th, we love to.
Yeah, attend.
I know you don't live for going to town meetings, but you're just coming as a private citizen would be great if you could.
yeah. I have to look at my calendar. I'm away a bunch of days this next couple of weeks. But November 7th. No, I should be back by then. Yeah, but the other thing about the other thing I was alluding to in there is that, I mean, if you look around the land around that train site, I mean, it's basically 3 different towns that would have been within the confines of what they normally had in that. And then I don't know how much the rules have changed since I originally read the stuff they put out, but I mean, like Ashland and Hopkinton are just they should have to eat some of that domain.
Well, they will. I believe, maybe Tom. I guess we'll find out on November 7th.
No, they're not going to be able to. It has to be the towns, but
Oh, that's crazy.
But it's really not that bad. I mean, I don't want to waste all your time this morning going over the deeds. We can go over it later, but it's really just drawing up. And one thing is, it's 50 acres, but they don't need to be contiguous. And there's more flexibility in the guidelines now as to how big or how small. They did adjust it to account for specific towns who have a harder time meeting that 50 acres. It really is a lot more flexible. And I don't know all the vagaries of it, but it's a lot less stringent than it was before. And Joe and Alex, just to give you a little bit more context on that, and then we can move on. I can get you guys to go on with your lives today. So there's deadlines. So big picture is the town really needs to adopt this zoning overlay in order to qualify for various state programs, including state programs, grant programs that would come into bear on this project, 21 Highlands. So they need to do it. And there's a deadline of, I think, the end of 2024 to actually have it in place. But there's an interim deadline for this action plan that has to be put together. And that deadline is January 2023, which at this point is really only 3 months away. So one of the points of the joint meeting of the planning board and SHOPC next week is I think it's going to be to talk about that action plan that needs to be together. Obviously we're not going to get a rezoning approved and town meeting approved before the 31st, but the town does have to put together an action plan. And I don't know what that entails or what's in it or what has to be done with it. I presume that the action plan has to be filed with the DHCD at some point, but that's the immediate sort of action item that the town has to take before January 31st of 2023, apparently.
So not to belabor this, SHOPC has a pre-meeting that night in person at town hall at 6:30.
Yeah.
And then the board meeting is at 7.
Right.
The joint meeting, so to speak.
Okay, cool. So, my thought is, bringing back to this, I thought we'd sort of hold off on drafting that until we have that meeting with that joint meeting, Jesse, and then we can kind of reflect in our summary here where, what the status is of that, what the action item that the town's taking on that. I mean, I don't envision that section being going off three pages, but we'll be able to flush it out a little bit once we have more information on those. And between now and then, I'll take a harder look at the new guidelines too, and maybe give a little bit of detail on what the implications of that are and what the requirements are in terms of density and what the zoning has to include, because that will be, when that is adopted, that will be a very good option for, and probably will become the definitive option for permitting a multifamily project on our site, because that's really the only local zoning bylaw that will allow for multifamily housing of the extent we want, or more than 6 units or 9 units.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the updated version is, because the old version, oh my God. What it would have forced us to allow would seem absolutely crazy, because
Yeah.
the only thing that would have limited is the fact that we'd have to build a sewer system. That was
Well,
basically the
yeah,
problem.
yeah. If it was developed, right? I know.
Feasibility is not part of the equation.
I know.
Mhm.
That is the hard part of develop, demonstrating that we can do 15 units per acre of actual developable land, and that's the owner's part of the bylaws, to have to demonstrate that they're developable, and that goes to sewer and septic and
it was written by people that were looking to do it in more high density places than really 128 ring type of stuff.
Yeah, but the concept behind it is they want communities that have MBTA stations to have more dense, not just on 128, but even small communities, to have more dense housing to relieve the overall pressure and there's such a housing shortage throughout the state. Like the whole point of this MBTA overlay district is to sort of force other towns and municipalities to allow more dense housing in proximity to train stations and MBTA stations.
Which is funny, because we could use them. I wish they'd use the commercial stuff in Boston to build the affordable housing, because we have empty commercial space out here that those companies could come and use.
Yeah.
Philosophical. Sorry.
No, I know. I'm with you. So the last thing I thought about, hey, Joe, you sent me, I don't know if you sent the email to everybody, but you had some thoughts about, going back to our report, about, a section or summary or concepts of talking about advantages and disadvantages of the property being developed by a private developer versus the town through the housing.
What I thought was would it be worth it to set up, instead of writing it in paragraph form, to set up a table? And because basically you have 3 options, which are the private, the town public development, and then a combo, and list the main advantages, disadvantages, and then create in the table who has the advantages or disadvantages, where they lie. We could do that in a simple matrix table, either that or use it as an exhibit, and we can just sort of address that, because a lot of the issues are fairly it's obviously, if you do a private development, you may have some issues with zoning, town issues, all those sorts of things. Whereas with a combo or a public, you aren't. And if the public can provide cheaper funding, so private development funding is more expensive. I mean, there are a lot of these things where it's sort of like advantage here, disadvantage here, and it's easy enough to do in a table. We could even do it with a colored box or a check, or any number of I haven't done my graphics programs lately, but there are a whole bunch of visual aids to use that would make it a little easier.
Do you want to take a stab at doing that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And just, just talking about this for 2 minutes in concept, I mean, some of the more salient advantages and disadvantages are that, and I'm a commercial real estate lawyer, but I've never done an affordable housing project, so this is definitely not my world. But the people whose world it is tell me that having the town develop it themselves is a horrible way to do it, and inefficient, more expensive. And I don't know all the vagaries of why, but one of the big reasons is that the town has to go through the public procurement process for everything they do, and they've got to get 3 bids for every contract they enter into. And I don't know how that translates into real life. If the town did this, they'd have to hire a developer, and they have to put out a bid for developers and go through a whole bid process, and then they'd have to hire a contractor, and they'd have to go through the bid process for the contractor. And so the people who do affordable housing tell me that having the town do it is a horrible way to do it.
Yeah, it could slow it down tremendously. At least from my own experience.
How it would happen. I have a question. Is 40B at all applicable to allowing us to do more with this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And right now, before the MBTA bylaw is adapted, I think if somebody wanted to develop it right now, today, and wanted to do a 15-unit multifamily affordable housing project on this 21 Island property, the only way they could do it is through a 40B project. Because, you know, per our zoning summary, none of the other zoning bylaws would allow for that dense of a development.
Well, that was the purpose of 40B, to give that option in this case.
Right, exactly. Because, you know, in towns that otherwise have zoning bylaws like ours that don't, you know, put restrictions on multifamily development and therefore put restrictions by implication on creating affordable housing, 40B is a mechanism to allow developers to come in and override local zoning and do multifamily housing, you know, under 40B rather than under local zoning. So yeah, short answer to Alex, 40B is the best way to develop affordable housing right now.
It's more the neighborhood that would be fighting that. I mean,
I don't know if you can fight 40B.
well, that flag I think is a 40B project, and the neighborhood's been fighting that for what, 6 years?
Yeah, they can always fight it. It's tough though. It's a lot tougher.
So far, I'd say they're winning.
Yeah, but not because of 40B itself. It's because of the actual site limitations of you're talking about Park Central.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know, people can always file lawsuits and drag things out, but I ultimately think that when all is said and done, he's gonna get approval for a 40B project on that.
Well, that'll pretty much cap us then. At that point, nobody else will be able to do one.
Yeah, I know.
He gets that in.
I
So,
know.
well, at least nobody outside of the town itself.
Well, no, I mean, if the town hits the 10% housing stock threshold of affordable housing, then developers can no longer come in and override local zoning. They can still do a 40B project, but they're no longer get the sort of
Yeah.
point of
No,
40B, you know?
what I meant is without the town voting
Right.
through endorsing the project. That's what I meant.
Right.
Oh,
All right. Well, that sounds like a good way to go, Joe.
I also sent you an updated draft of some of the program, conversations that I had with the state agent about the programs. And
okay, cool.
I'm still not sure it was dry enough, so I sent it to you to sort of look at, at your leisure and sort of see if that was more in line, because my first one was wordy, I guess, but let's call it wordy, over informational.
Your first chart, you mean, of the programs?
No, I sent you a draft of.
Yeah. But I thought we were kind of distilling from that, right? Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Well, no, I sent you a distilled down version, and I don't know if I.
Oh, you did. Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know if it. I don't know if it was still a little bit. If I studied the tone of the document more, I probably would get more of my mimicking back. But
yeah.
So anyway, you can check that out.
We'll
check that out another time.
And, all of this is kind of rough right now. We'll all refine it. I kind of feel like we're just plugging in the sections at this point, and then we'll get to a point in the hopefully near future where we're taking what we have and then just refining it into a final report.
Yeah, you can, like I said, you can look at that later and just send me back the thing going, yeah, this is probably better on track, or
okay.
Something else, and I'll put together the table in the meantime.
Okay, that sounds
I think
great. All right, well,
I think
good.
I think in terms of the table information, I think I sent you an email on that it was sort of just a couple, like 2 pages or so I've been working on of just issues from each side, whether you're private, public, or a merged project. And as we talked about before, I don't think we fully understand how a merged project would actually break down, and how the process would work, which makes that a little bit more problematic to work out the pluses and minuses. For instance, if you put up the project out to bid and got a private developer, does that mean that you wouldn't have to go through the procurement process for labor, process, supplies, and other sorts of things? And I don't know how that works. So I think there's still some uncertainty in that. Maybe we'll have to talk to somebody that really can define that for us.
Yeah. Doug Mans might be a good person to talk to. Doug is a new member of SHOPC. Jesse and I don't know him, and Alex know him. He's a new member of SHOPC, but he's a big downtown developer. But right now he does big downtown Boston developments. But in his prior to the company he's with now, he did a lot of 40B projects and did a lot of affordable housing, multifamily development around Massachusetts. So he might be a good person to talk to, just to kind of shoot the breeze on some of these issues. And I'm going to circle back with some of the other lawyers I know that do multifamily and affordable housing, and kind of get some more specifics from them as this whole concept of development through a municipality or development through a private developer.
Okay.
So maybe we can compare notes on that, Joe, and come up with some common themes to put in.
I'll try and build the table, and we can always just adjust it, change the way the boxes are listed, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. That sounds great.
All right.
Do we want to set up the next meeting? I was thinking, just because I didn't get as much of this done as I'd hoped, that we'd do another one relatively soon. Oh geez, I was thinking the second week of November, but my schedule's looking jam packed. Maybe the third week of November.
Okay.
Evening or morning?
What do you guys like more? We did morning today just because we had scheduling conflicts. Do you guys like mornings more than evenings? I'm good either way.
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
This time slot worked pretty well for me. And that would work on the 14th or the 16th or those are the 2
Okay,
days
gotcha.
that they're, sorry.
Why don't we do, sorry, Jesse, if that works for you guys, why don't we say 8:30 again on Wednesday, the 16th? Would that work for Joe and Alex?
Yes.
I think it should be fine.
Okay, gotcha. And I'm gonna shoot you guys. I didn't get around. I won't make you sit around until I have another 10 minutes to go on finishing the minutes for this, but I'll just finish them, circulate to you guys, and we can approve the next meeting at the same time we approve Joe's minutes for this meeting. We can approve both at our next meeting, if that makes sense.
Okay. Did you get an email from the clerk on that?
On the meeting minutes not being
Yeah.
made? They probably sent my Southborough email. I probably didn't see it, but I'm constantly getting those emails because we just never have the minutes in on time.
Okay.
Well, it's also a matter of, meeting within certain periods of time to then approve the minutes, and
I know.
It is what it
It's not
it is what
easy.
it is.
We do the best we can.
Somebody says they're not going to meet for 3 months. I mean, you can't really submit minutes. You don't,
Yeah,
Kind of
30
have
days
to prove.
later.
I mean, like, I don't get how that works, but
Yeah. All right, cool. So why don't we next meeting? Does that work for you, Alex?
Yes, it does. That's fine.
Okay, gotcha. The 16th at 8:30.
8:30.
Yeah, a.m.
Well, the good news there is I don't have to put on my pants and get in the car.
Right. We can all throw on a shirt and still be sitting in our pajama pants. But,
I think I did that once, actually.
all right, cool. Well, thank you all. And we will reconvene on November 16th. And I guess we need to make a motion to adjourn, which I'll make.
So, second.
Okay. All in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye. And Jesse,
Stein,
aye.
aye.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
one.
Have a
Thanks.
good one.
Bye.